Dear students, yesterday we talked about the first part of the chapter, the portrait of a lady, and where you saw that this Khuswant Singh, his relationship, his affection, his love with his grandmother, the lifestyle he spent with his grandmother in the village, it was very memorable, unforgettable, if you say, in the part of Khuswant Singh, and also in the life of the grandmother. So there was a snap, there was a break in the relationship when the parents of Khuswant Singh, they wanted to bring Khuswant Singh to city for higher studies or to go to English medium schools. During that time, he could see how helpless was the grandmother because she felt she could not help Khuswant Singh in his studies. And also she had complaints about the subjects being taught at the school of Khuswant Singh. Today we'll continue from next para, and that is the page number. Page number 5. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. Let me explain. So the time has come right now for Khuswant Singh to go for higher studies, and he is going to a university right now, and he was given a separate room, and that room is only of his own. And when this particular higher education came in the life of Khuswant Singh, then the common link, the common bond in which both of them were tied, okay, so that link was snapped, that link was broken. There was a breach. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. The meaning is very clear, student. What is the meaning here? My grandmother passively, silently, without any grumbling, accepted her submission to her secluded life after Sri gradually loses touch with her grandson. That means silence was there. Everywhere silence reigned. And Khuswant Singh, he is going for higher studies, he is going to university. And in this critical juncture, if you expect reactions from grandmother, it is not expectable. The grandmother was silent and she wanted to surrender. And she had to surrender in this situation to her seclusion, means to staying aloof, to stay silent, to stay away, okay, from other affairs. So she had to submit. So this line refers to her passive submission to her lonely life, secluded life, after she gradually loses connection, loses touch with her grandson. So from this time onwards, you can see the gap between the two is very large. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. That means now she spent her time maximum with her spinning wheel. Okay, that was an instrument. It was available at his home, Khuswant Singh's home, and she was busy with her spinning wheel. Normally, she talked to anyone, and she was busy doing that. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel, spinning and reciting prayers. So a question may come here: how did grandmother spend her time? Okay, in the third phase means when Khuswant Singh went for higher studies at university, how did she spend her time? You can use these lines here. She spent her time sitting day and night by the spinning wheel, and she was busy doing that. Not only spinning wheel she was doing, she was also reciting or murmuring prayers. Only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirrupings. Some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders. Some even sat on her head. She smiled but never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest happy hour of the day for her. Dear students, in this part, another question may come here. What is the happiest happy hour, in the life of the grandmother of Khuswant Singh? So you must remember this line particularly. So these lines are going to tell us one thing. Again, I want to highlight here. In the beginning, we saw the grandmother of Khuswant Singh. She expressed her desire, extending her helping hand by feeding animals. And that was seen when they were coming back from school. And grandmother used to carry stale chapatis and she used to give to stray dogs. And here you see, because no stray dogs are here, and she had to spend her time staying in the house. So on on the roof of the house here, what actually was happening here, on the roof of the house, or you can say the veranda of the house, when she was sitting over there, she was going to give breadcrumbs, little bits of breads. She was giving it to the sparrows. The sparrows, the birds, you can say, the birds, sparrows, they were sitting around her, and they were creating a veritable bedlam of chirping. What is veritable bedlam? Bedlam, it's a kind of noisy atmosphere, noisy confusion. It's a kind of commotion. It's a kind of hustle and bustle. It's a kind of huge noise that was created by a huge group of sparrows or huge group of birds. So when all the birds are sitting together, they were enjoying the breadcrumbs given by the grandmother of Khuswant Singh. So this picture looks very real. This picture looks, very interesting, that how animals and human beings are connected and how grandmother and sparrows have got a permanent tie or a permanent bond among themselves. This is very beautiful to see. And during that time, you cannot imagine, many sparrows, many birds are coming, and they are perched on her legs, sitting on her legs. They are sitting on her legs, and some were sitting on her shoulders. Some even were there. They were sitting on her head. She smiled, but never sued them. What is sued them away? Driven them away or driving them away. She was just enjoying her company with these little birds, with these animals. So she was enjoying. She can't imagine that how things going on here. It is only symbolizing her interminable love for the animals. It used to be the happiest happy hour of the day for her. I just told it. Next para. For I decided to go abroad for further studies. I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I'd be away for 5 years. Remember, 5 years for higher studies, Khuswant Singh had to go. And at her age, one could never fail. So this line, one could never fail. That means here Khuswant Singh wanted to say, at such age of my grandmother, when I go for higher studies for 5 years, I will be away from her for 5 years. So at her age, it could never be said with certainty that how the grandmother is going to feel. So this line means it is natural, it is very normal when the grandson of this grandmother, when Khuswant Singh is going away for 5 years, 5 years, a huge gap between them, it is really very painful. So at her age, the pain she is going to have in her mindset, it is clearly visible, it is clearly understandable. There is nothing to be explained in detail that how does she feel. That means it could never be said with certainty. So we can't say actually that how she is going to feel. It is very painful. She might feel inside. One could never tell, but my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. Yes, we know it is very painful for everyone, for grandmother also. But you see, there was a change. What is the change here? The grandmother was not even sentimental. So what expectation Khuswant Singh had, that it will be very painful for my grandmother because I'm going away for 5 years, but sentimentalism was not a symbol on the face of my grandmother. She came to leave me at the railway station. So see how comfortable the grandmother is, and she was spontaneous. She was spontaneous, accompanying Khuswant Singh to the railway station, okay, to bid him farewell. So she came here, and but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer. She was busy doing that rosary beads and prayer. She was going on doing. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. I just told it right now. She was busy doing prayer. Okay, but she came to the railway station. Silently, she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact. Now, a question may come here: what is the last physical contact between Khuswant Singh and his grandmother? You can highlight this line, students, in the answer. So, what happened here at the railway station when Khuswant Singh is going away for higher studies to university for 5 years? Grandmother, in a state of spiritualism, in a state of murmuring her inaudible prayers, she came close to Khuswant Singh and she silently kissed the forehead of Khuswant Singh, and that was perhaps a message the grandmother wanted to give, that my love and affection, my blessings are always with you. Wherever you are, I am always there in your memory. Okay, so this is a kind of cherishing moment. The moment can be always remembered. Okay, this is unforgettable memory for Khuswant Singh. The moist imprint means what? Weight. The weight impression or imprint, you can say, as perhaps the last sign. This is perhaps the last sign between them, and it was felt by Khuswant Singh. But that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She still had no time for words. And while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer and with frivolous rebukes. So what happened here, students? After 5 years, when Khuswant Singh came back from higher studies, Khuswant Singh saw there was no change in the look of his grandmother. She looked as usual when Khuswant Singh left her before 5 years. So the appearance looks almost same. Okay, she did not. She still had no time for words, so she could not express anything. She didn't say anything on the spot, but she clasped me in her arms. I could hear her reciting her prayers. So you see, the whole chapter, wherever you move in each line, one line students should remember. This question is very important, that describe how the grandmother of Khuswant Singh is symbolizing a goddess of spiritualism. It may come. Okay, and how do you go to say that the grandmother of Khuswant Singh is a symbol of spiritualism? Okay, all these lines you can add here. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moment was with her sparrows. So, animal-loving temperament, animal-loving nature, it is always highlighted in the part of the grandmother. She was going on feeding the sparrows, even if she could spend her time maximum with her grandson, because he came back after 5 years. But it is not so. So these lines are indicating one thing. Even though the grandmother feels that she could spend her time with her grandson, but she suppressed these feelings. Okay, she didn't want to show it outside, and she wanted to spend her time with the sparrows. So she went on giving them food longer time. So this is the most happiest moment, you can say, in the life of grandmother. With frivolous rebukes. Frivolous rebukes means in a casual way, in a light-hearted way, you go to rebuke, you go to scold somebody. So this is a kind of scolding, not in a cruel or not in a bad way, but with love and affection. Okay, and she used to do this. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of neighborhood got an old drum and started to sing. For several hours, he thumped the sagging. So in the evening, there was a change that was seen by Khuswant Singh. His grandmother gathered all the neighbors, okay, and she went to have an old, dilapidated, saggy drum. And for several hours, she thumped. Thump means what? She started beating this drum, this saggy skin of the dilapidated drum. What is dilapidated drum here? Deteriorated. Very old drum. Okay, that was there. She went on beating the drum very hard and sang the homecoming of warriors. Who is the warrior here? Our grandson. Khuswant Singh is the warrior here, as if he has come from a battle, okay, after a great triumph, after a great victory, and she is going to celebrate the victory of this warrior, of her grandson. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining, so she went on beating in such a way she didn't stop. At her age, continuously beating a drum, okay, without caring her health, it was really dangerous for health. What is overstraining? It's a kind of tiring activity. She got fatigued, but she went on beating. That was the first time since I had known her that she didn't pray. This is the first time in her life, students, where Khuswant Singh marked she stopped praying because she was celebrating the homecoming of her grandson. The next morning, she was taken ill, mild fever, and the doctor told us it would go. So next morning, it was natural because she went on beating the drums for a long time. So next morning, the family members, they took grandmother to the doctor, and grandmother thought differently. She told us her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life she had omitted to pray, she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. Again, the same important lines here, highlighting spiritualism in the life of grandmother. You see how confident is she, and she was able to say that my life is there only for a few hours. So just leave me, don't worry. I'm going to try. So let me remain busy in my rosary beads, in my inaudible prayers, and doing prayer. Okay, give me time for that. This is the request that was made by grandmother at the end. We protested, but she ignored our protests. So she lay peacefully in the bed, praying, telling her beads. This is natural. You see, at the old age, when you have been practicing one thing throughout the life, at the last stage of your life, it comes automatically. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, you can see there are many lines, students. It is said that praying God, worshipping God, and chanting, murmuring the names of gods or the scriptures, if you do it every day, if you do it in your life regularly, then there is a possibility when you go to die at the end of your life, these lines are going to come to your mouth automatically. So it happened in the case of grandmother. Even before we could suspect her lips stopped moving, the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. So this line symbolizes that. The grandmother breathed her last. A peaceful pale color face, a colorless face that was seen when rosary beads fell off her fingers. This pale environment spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. Last part is very important. We lifted her off the bed, and his customary laid her on the ground, covered her with the red shroud. So when the dead body was there, they covered with red shrouds. It was customary by ritual. They need to move. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. So it happens normally. In the evening, we went to her room with crude stretcher. Then crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. Stretcher was there, and they took it so that they can take grandmother with that. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. So see how nature is going to also support, going to help the departure, the final departure of grandmother from this world, from the earth. The sun was setting and her room was lit, okay, with a blaze of golden light, which stopped halfway in the courtyard. All over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff, wrapped in red shroud. Okay, she lay dead and stiff wrapped, because normally it happens when a dead body is there, a corpse is there, you have to go to cover the dead body with a shroud, and here the collar was red shroud, they covered it, they wrapped it. It was very stiff, very tight. Thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. Sparrows were there, birds were there, okay, and a question may come that how did the animals, how did the sparrows, at the end of the life of grandmother, they paid their final tribute to her. Okay, so what was the tribute? The tribute was, there was no chirping, there was no bedlam of chirping, students. There was no commotion, no hustle and bustle, no noisy surrounding. Sparrows were there, many sparrows were there. A huge gathering of sparrows were there, but not a single sound was coming. We felt sorry for the birds. My mother fetched some bread up for them. She broke into little crumbs, the way my grandmother used to, threw it to them. So the mother of Khuswant Singh thought, perhaps if she goes to give breadcrumbs to the sparrows, they will take it, but nothing happened. It was a futile attempt done by the mother of Khuswant Singh. Not a single sparrow took a single breadcrumb. They were sitting silently, they were sitting emotionally hurt, they were sitting psychologically hurt that the near and dear one of these sparrows, she was no more. And who was she? The grandmother. The sparrows took no notice of the bread when we carried my grandmother's cups up when the dead body was carried off. They flew away quietly, silently. No sound again. Silently, they accompanied when the dead body was carried off. The corpse was carried off. They silently moved with the dead body also. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. So, students, this is the end of the chapter. And remember, students, in this chapter, four things you should remember. Number one, there are 3 pages of the story here. Number one is early childhood of Khuswant Singh. Second is the city life. And third one is when the author Khuswant Singh, he went for the higher studies in a university. He got a separate room. And another question, number 2 point is that how did grandmother spend her time when Khuswant Singh went for higher studies? This is second point very important for you. And the third one that I have been telling you throughout the story, that spiritualistic attitude, spiritualism as a symbol and the character of grandmother, please highlight that, because throughout the story we have seen that how strong was the grandmother believing the presence of God, the presence of Almighty, and she used to carry her rosary beads, and with inaudible prayer she always was going on doing that. So in the NCERT book there are some questions, students. Try the answers. Don't worry, if you fail I'll go to help you, and drop the answers on my WhatsApp number. I also give you some extra questions today itself in your group. Thank you.